1763. The 7 Years' War, a global conflict fought by European powers, is at an end. And the British Empire has emerged victorious. Dominating its French and Spanish rivals, it claims new territory in India, the West Indies, and above all, North America. France must accept the loss of nearly all its colonies. 3 million square miles of land, comparable in size to all Europe. The British now rule an empire on which the sun never sets. But in victory, the seeds of future conflict are sown. The enormous cost of the war has ballooned Britain's national debt. Interest payments alone consume more than half its annual spending. And the vast new territories in America will need defending from bitter imperial rivals who will look for any chance to reverse Britain's gains. Native American tribes also pose a threat, especially those that are former allies of the French. In 1763, Chief Pontiac of the Odawa leads a revolt against the British. There is bloodshed along the frontier as every British fort west of the Appalachians comes under attack. But the greatest challenge will come not from external enemies, but from the very colonies Britain seeks to protect. A 157 years have passed since the first British colony was founded in North America. Now, there are 26 British colonies in North America and the West Indies. 13 of these lie along America's eastern seaboard, where after years of prosperity and immigration, the population has passed 2 million. Arguably, there is more that divides these 13 colonies than unites them. Each has its own distinct character, history, and form of government. Several were founded by those seeking religious freedom in the New World. The Puritans who settled Massachusetts, the Catholics of Maryland, and Quakers of Pennsylvania. Each colony has its share of rugged pioneers and economic opportunists, enticed by promises of plentiful land. But there are also many who arrive destitute, desperate, or against their will. Slavery is legal in all 13 colonies. In the north, enslaved Africans are a small minority, about 5% of the population. But in the south, the economy is dominated by slave plantations that grow rice, tobacco, and indigo. In Virginia, African slaves make up around 40% of the population. In South Carolina, 60%. Early settlers had been overwhelmingly from England, but in recent decades, the picture has begun to change, with more immigrants from Ireland, Scotland, and Germany. All have helped to shape a new American culture, which makes a sharp impression on visitors. It is less deferential, more enterprising, increasingly self-confident. Old ties with the motherland are not what they used to be. For most of their history, the relationship between the British government and its American colonies has been one of salutary neglect. The colonies had been largely left to manage their own affairs. while Britain focused on more lucrative possessions in the West Indies and India. But this is about to change. Britain faces an extraordinary debt crisis, and many expect the colonies to help meet the cost of their own defence. It seems a reasonable expectation. The average American's tax burden is a fraction of that paid by the average Briton. By one calculation, a Briton pays 26 shillings a year in tax, a New Englander 1 shilling. But it is the manner in which the British government goes about raising taxes that will put it and the colonies on a collision course. British Prime Minister George Grenville is determined to fix the country's spiralling debt crisis. He believes new colonial taxes must be part of the solution. In 1764, he proposes two new revenue-raising measures. A Sugar Act, which actually lowers the tax on foreign sugar and molasses, but only as part of a determined effort to ensure more effective collection. And a Stamp Act, which will tax all commercial and legal documents, from newspapers and playing cards to attorneys' licenses and land grants. These relatively minor taxes are not expected to cause much fuss. Englishmen have been paying them for 70 years. But to the surprise of the British government, the reaction in the colonies is uproar. The Stamp Act particularly hits merchants, lawyers and business owners, the most articulate and influential members of colonial society. They condemn the measures in newspapers and a flood of pamphlets.
This tax will deprive us of all our invaluable rights and privileges. It will drain us suddenly of our cash, occasion an entire stagnation of trade, discourage every kind of industry, and involve us in the most abject slavery.
Opposition focuses less on the financial burden than on the principle of consent. Americans protest that they have no representation in the British Parliament and can accept no taxation without representation. It is their rights as British subjects, they point out, rights protected by the British Constitution, that are being trampled on. Prime Minister George Grenville argues the American colonies have virtual representation in Parliament. That is, their interests are represented in a general way by all British MPs. After all, even most Britons don't have the right to vote in a general election. Grenville's argument does not win many backers, even in Parliament itself, where electoral reform is a fierce battleground.
There is an idea, in some, that the colonies are virtually represented in the House. I would fain know by whom an American is represented here. Is he represented by any knight of the Shire in any county in this kingdom? Or will you tell him that he is represented by any representative of a borough which perhaps its own representatives never saw? This is what is called the rotten part of the Constitution. It cannot continue a century.
The Speaker is Pitt the Elder, a renowned former Prime Minister, who adds
that this kingdom has no right to lay a tax upon the colonies.
Throughout 1765, colonial assemblies meet to protest against the new acts. In the Virginia House of Burgesses, Patrick Henry emerges as one of the most radical leaders of colonial resistance. He proposes a series of resolutions, which are adopted by the House.
Resolved, that the first adventurers and settlers of His Majesty's colony and Dominion of Virginia brought with them all the liberties, privileges, and immunities that have at any time been held, enjoyed, and possessed by the people of Great Britain. Resolved, that the taxation of the people by themselves, or by persons chosen by themselves to represent them, is the only security against a burdensome taxation.
But there are bitter divisions within the Virginia Assembly. Some members believe Patrick Henry goes too far. Loyalty to Britain and the British Crown is deep-rooted. Conservative members succeed in removing his most radical resolution, that only Virginia's assembly has the authority to raise taxes in the colony. Among the regular observers at these debates, a brilliant 22-year-old law clerk named Thomas Jefferson. The divisions in Virginia are mirrored across the colonies, as debate grows more heated and protests turn violent. Tax collectors are beaten up by mobs, driven out of town, or forced to resign. Tax documents are destroyed. Effigies of royal governors are burned or hanged from liberty trees. Meanwhile, delegates from 9 of the 13 colonies meet in New York, where they draft a petition to the British King, George III, and Parliament. While assuring Crown and Parliament of their unwavering loyalty, the delegates declare that it is their right, as Englishmen, to have no taxes imposed upon them without their consent. Colonial merchants begin to organize a boycott of British goods. The uproar, the possible damage to trade, plus the fact the taxes are clearly unenforceable, finally forces the British government to back down. The following year, 1766, the Sugar Act and Stamp Act are scrapped by a new British Prime Minister, Lord Rockingham. The colonies have won a major victory. But the British Parliament does not back down over its right to raise taxes in America. The same day it repeals the taxes, it declares,
Parliament assembled had, hath, and of right ought to have full power and authority to make laws and statutes of sufficient force and validity to bind the colonies and people of America, in all cases whatsoever.
The words seem calculated to outrage America's colonial assemblies, and convince many that though this storm has passed, another will surely follow. (1767). 1 year on, Parliament passes a new series of measures to raise revenue from the colonies and demonstrate its authority over them. They are named after the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the Townshend Acts. In the 13 colonies, they are met with howls of protest. Royal administrators are chased out of towns. Some tax officials are tarred and feathered, a brutal punishment where the victim is paraded through the streets covered in scalding tar. A new term emerges for these rabble-rousers: patriots. Colonists who seek to avoid confrontation with Parliament become known as loyalists. Many communities and even families will soon be divided between these two camps, though for now, most are somewhere in the middle. Among the patriots in New England are a group calling themselves the Sons of Liberty. Led by Samuel Adams, they include merchant and smuggler John Hancock, physician Joseph Warren, and silversmith Paul Revere. The crisis comes to a head in Massachusetts. Boston has been a hotbed of patriot activity since the Stamp Act, and tension rises when British soldiers are quartered here in 1768. On the 5th of March, 1770, an altercation between soldiers and locals turns into a tense standoff. Taunted by an angry crowd hundreds strong, pelted with snowballs and rocks, the small British detachment loses its nerve and opens fire. Five local men are killed. The Boston Massacre, as it becomes known, is powerful propaganda for the patriot cause. The news carried in pamphlets and prints, the most famous created by Paul Revere. Blood has been spilt. Emotions are running high.
Let the 5th of March never be forgot,
writes Bostonian Samuel Savage in his diary. Many anticipate a downward spiral into violence and disorder. Despite the bloodshed in Boston, there are many on both sides who seek to de-escalate the crisis between British, Loyalists and Patriots. The British governor of Massachusetts, Thomas Hutchinson, withdraws the troops from Boston and has those involved in the shooting put on trial. They are acquitted of murder thanks to the efforts of their skilled lawyer, a noted patriot, John Adams. In Britain, there is a new Prime Minister, Lord North. A close friend of the King and staunch advocate of parliamentary authority, he will serve in the role for the next 12 years. The economic damage of colonial boycotts persuades him to repeal Townsend's new taxes. All but one, on tea. Relative calm returns to the colonies. The boycott is lifted. A second crisis has been weathered. But in New England, hostility towards the British government lingers. Here, local merchants rely on ships and trade, and have long resented British imperial rules, which restrict their commerce with other nations. Many patriots, like John Hancock, make extra money by smuggling goods into the colonies, bypassing British import duties. British efforts to clamp down on smuggling do not make them any more popular. Royal Navy warships are used to inspect and seize vessels belonging to prominent local figures, like John Hancock. To the outrage of New England merchants, the British also begin trying suspected smugglers in special Vice Admiralty courts, rather than the more sympathetic local courts. In 1772, the Sons of Liberty hit back, boarding the Royal Navy schooner HMS Gaspé and setting it ablaze. Meanwhile, in Britain, the Empire's largest corporation is on the verge of bankruptcy. The East India Company has a monopoly on British trade with India, China, and the East Indies. But a credit crisis now threatens its survival. In 1773, to help keep the company afloat, Parliament grants it the right to sell tea directly to the American colonies. The company also receives tariff exemptions that will make its tea cheaper than that of the local smugglers. But a small tax of 3 pence per pound of tea remains in place. The new Tea Act thus threatens the profits of local smugglers and provokes patriots on the principle of taxation without representation. As 7 company ships cross the Atlantic, packed with 250 tons of tea, the Sons of Liberty and others pressure tea dealers to reject the shipments. When one ship arrives in Philadelphia, thousands of locals threaten anyone who helps to unload its cargo. Most of the ships are forced to turn back. In Boston, however, Governor Thomas Hutchinson has had enough of boycotts. He ensures that 3 company ships enter the harbour. On a December evening in 1773, members of the Sons of Liberty board the ships, disguised as Native Americans. They've chosen these costumes as a symbol of their new American identity. They break open 340 chests of tea and dump the contents into the harbour. 92,000 pounds of tea in all, with a value today of nearly $2 million. Patriots celebrate the Boston Tea Party as a bold act of defiance. And it is just the most famous of several such acts in numerous ports and towns. According to Patriot lawyer John Adams,
this is the most magnificent movement of all. There is a dignity, a majesty, a sublimity in this last effort of the Patriots that I greatly admire. The people should never rise without doing something to be remembered, something notable and striking.
The reaction in London is rather different. The British government sees only lawlessness, mob rule, and an outrageous attack on private property. Enough is enough. If the government does not act firmly now, its authority in North America will lie in tatters. The time for restraint is over. The gloves are coming off. Today, there are probably more original, high-quality history documentaries being made than at any time in history. Yet at the same time, it's getting harder and harder to find the good ones, amidst the flood of derivative videos, misleading titles, and the worst of AI-generated content. So instead of losing precious time trawling the internet, many of our viewers are turning to another option, the prestige streaming service Nebula. Nebula is built and curated by creators like us, which means that here, you're guaranteed to find high-quality videos made with passion and integrity about fascinating topics. Right now, we're getting our fix of history and engineering with Mustard, a brilliant channel that examines curious engineering projects and amazing machines from our past. The stories are gripping, and the visuals and animations are superb. Mustard's huge catalogue includes several videos only available on Nebula, including a Nebula original documentary on the development of the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber, There are hundreds of other great creators on Nebula across all genres, so if engineering isn't your thing, you're still sure to find something you'll love. From original movies and entertainment series, to documentaries covering everything from art to food, gaming, and of course, history. The History homepage shows just how much Nebula has to offer, including Nebula Originals, only available to subscribers. Right now, Nebula is the most interesting, fastest-growing, independent video platform on the internet. And because Nebula fairly rewards its creators, your sign-up actively supports channels like ours, as we work hard to create ever more ambitious history content. We've got a great discount for Epic History viewers. The link in our video description gets you 40% off Nebula's annual plan. That's just $36 a year, or $3 a month. Even better, the Nebula Lifetime Plan offers lifetime access, no strings, for $300, and helps Nebula to fund more of its original, creator-owned series. Plus, a great new feature. All Nebula subscribers get a monthly guest pass to share with a friend, allowing access to Nebula for a full week. No payment info required, no restriction on what they can watch. So now subscribers can share their favourite videos with their favourite people. Thanks to all our existing Nebula subscribers, and for everyone else watching, we hope to see you there soon. Big thanks to our series historical consultant, Professor Frank Cogliano of the University of Edinburgh. And thanks as always to the Patreon supporters who help to make this channel possible. From builders such as Cody Anderson, Danny Dongru Wang and MS372, to citizens like John Fallon, Jerome Krull and Julian BTC, and heroes like Yuko Sin. Join their ranks by joining us on Patreon, where you'll get early, ad-free access to new videos, exclusive updates, and votes on future video topics.